So previously, and we did this with Barry and Babe Ruth. We did this with the GPS stuff and then the ages of billionaires, right? We created frequency histograms. So frequency, remember, just means how many. And a histogram is a bar graph, but it's for quantitative data. So those bars always touch. So how are we changing things today? Today we are doing cumulative frequency histograms. And then there is a type of line graph called an ogive. So we say ogive, like I'm doing the jive, hand jive. Ogive that you can put on a cumulative frequency histograph, or it can be independent, but the way to understand it is to kind of look at it that way. So cumulative is when we accumulate or we stack bars from left to right. So for this process, it's literally thinking about what every word means in cumulative frequency histogram and then going from there. And then what does it mean to accumulate? That's that idea of stacking. You guys accumulate papers all day long, right? And if you don't keep them organized, they're a mess. I like to think of snowfall being snow. That's slow, not snow. Snowfall accumulation is kind of what I like to think about. So snowfall, it might start and it stops, but if it doesn't raise, temperature doesn't raise, or there's not some sort of any sort of compacting down, it just stacks and gets higher and higher and higher. And that's what we have in some of those big storms that come across like the lakes when we have lake effect snow. Okay, so we're gonna go back to our GPS prices, right? So class, we had already created our equal class sizes and we made 7 classes. And then, and this is also price, right, in dollars. It's just good to remember what this is. And then we sorted those GPSs into the different intervals. And if we add this column up, this total is 30, right? The total number of GPSs is 30. So that's how tall our last bar is going to be. So we're going to call this column cumulative frequency. All right. And remember that the last bar is going to be all of them. It's going to be 30. So essentially, we can also say that the interval for that last class is 59 to 450, but we typically do not change the intervals. We just say that it's a cumulative frequency histogram with the knowledge that we're stacking for a reason. Okay, so we don't change we still have the same number lined underneath. Okay, so how do we stack? That's not that difficult. So this first one, from 59 to 114, we still have just 5. But as soon as we put $59 to $170, right? We're going to have the 5, but we're going to have the 8. So we're going to add these two together, and we're going to get a total of 13. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so then essentially this next interval is from $59 all the way up to $226. So we're just going to do that for these first two, just so we understand. And then how many GPSs are there? Well, it's 5 plus the 8 plus the 6. So we got to add that one on. And now we're up to 19. So it's up to you how you like to look at it. Like a lot of kids will then just be like, oh, well, 19 plus 5 is 24, right? And then 24 plus 2 will be 26. And 26 plus 1 is 27. And then, of course, you get 30. Make sense? That's accumulating. Now, the reason why we then might take it one step further is we might not always have 30 GPSs, and sometimes it's easier to talk in percentages. Okay? So the last thing that we're going to calculate, and we can make this type of histogram as well, is we do relative cumulative frequency. And when I'm doing relative, it's relative to the whole. Which then means we're going to get answers that can be converted into percents, but we usually keep them as decimals between 0 and 1. Okay. So we did these before. We did this first one before. We did 5 divided by 30, right? And that turned out to be 0.17. So 17% of our GPSs are 114 or less, right? But now we're going to do 13 divided by 30. And I don't know if I can do this one in my head. 0.37, I think. Yeah. 43? Oh, I'm wrong. 0.43. Okay. Oh, I was doing 11. So now we're going to do 19 out of 30. Can you guys finish this up? Yep, use your calculators. Remember, you put a decimal in the fraction if you want to return a decimal. I just missed one. Ooh, 30 divided by 30, of course, is 1 or 100%. Okay. All right. All right. So then the goal is whenever you hear that you're going to do something that's cumulative, it's always going to increase from left to right. Okay. So basically the setup is nearly the same for, well, it's the same for the x-axis. All right. So here's our big piece of graph paper. Remember that our axis, we had to put a break in the beginning, right? And we draw the axis in. And this is still going to be GPS prices in dollars. And we're just going to put the first value, okay, going across. So we start off with that 59, and then the bars can be too wide. So make sure you tick off. I think there's some extra graph on this one, and that's okay. All right, cool. So let's just think about it. If we're doing cumulative frequency, well, it's not the highest frequency of a single bar. The highest frequency of all the bars is 30, right? So we have to change our axis here because we need to be able to count up to 30. So I don't know if I gave us 15 or not. I don't think I did. So I don't think we could skip count by twos, I think. It'd be like 2.5s or something. So let's see. 1, 2. Yep, we're not going to be able to do every line is 2. We can do like this is 5 and this is 10. That will work though, right? 15, 20, 25, and 30. And so this is the important part. If you're making a cumulative frequency histograph, this is not just frequency, this is cumulative frequency. So we've done tick, tick, label, 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 except for we have not done a title yet. And so often in anything that's not just a plain old histogram, they'll say that it's a cumulative frequency histogram of kind of things. So we would put cumulative. That's great. Oh, man. I'll get that. It's okay. I like to use this side of the pen versus the other side of the pen because the other side of the pen makes so much noise on the board. It's like constantly tick, 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 tick. Oh, it really fell off. I broke it. Super glue! Okay, we'll get it later. It's all good. Cumulative frequency histogram for GPS prices. So kind of redundant, but if someone doesn't understand what you're doing, then they might think that there's 30 GPSs that are between 395 and 451. Okay. So now you're just going to make your bars. The bars are going to touch. They're going to keep increasing unless there was a bar that had nothing in it, right? That would be the thing that could happen. But here our bars are just going to increase. So our first bar is 5. But then when we put the 5 and the 8 together, we got 13. So the halves are going to be 2.5s. So 13 is just going to be right above. 19 is below the 20. Oops. And once again, candy striping helps to make it everybody good? So then, before you turn, like, why do we care about this type of graph? So a couple things can happen. Like if you were like, all right, I got 30 GPSs out there in a field. I want to talk about the Best Buy, and the Best Buy might be under $100. Like then you could be like, all right, well, 100 might be here. There's only 4 of them that might be less than that. So you could still kind of do some estimating, or you could be like, well, you should be able to find at least 20 GPSs that are going to be less than like that 283 price. So it's a little bit harder to do on the cumulative frequency histogram, which is why we either go to the relative frequency histogram or we combine with an Ogive. So on the next page, you're literally making the same exact histogram bar-wise, but we're now going to change things to percents, okay? And those are the percents that you calculated. So if you like, you can turn the page. Woo, no. You can turn the page and do your x-axis again, and then we'll go ahead and work on doing the percent. So this is going to be the same as what we've always done. Yep, and just open up your packet wide so you can see the numbers again. Okay, so our other axis we need to get up to essentially 100% or 1. So after we draw it in, draw it in, and for this one, I think you have 10 lines, so you can go that this is 20% or 0.2. This is 0.4. I still do 2 decimal places because that way it's easier to recognize that it's a percent. And so then what does this mean? Yep, you got to put relative, cumulative, frequency. And what I want you to do is make your bars, but not color them in or not candy stripe them. Okay, so if you already did it, don't worry about uncandy striping. Clearly, that's okay. But the reason why is I want to show you what an ogive is. And so if there's too many lines on there, get a little rough, just grab another color if you want to from like a highlighter or a colored pencil. But basically, I'm just going to make my lines a little bit lighter for this because it's going to be the same pattern, just we're following the percentages on the previous page. So we had 17%. Right. And then we had 43, like that, 63, 80, 87, 90, and then 100%. Can you give me a thumbs up when your bars are ready? I know that you're ready. Bars are ready? Hey Larry, you guys ready yet or not? You are? Okay. Okay. Will, you ready? Okay. So this is the deal. An ogive is a line graph that accumulates. And so an ogive can only be on something that goes up to 100% for like the full cumulative. Okay. So if you think about our scale of 59 all the way up to 451, this very end of the last bar, I can put a dot here and say that this is 100%, right, of my GPS. You guys agree with that? So I'm at the end of the bar. And then if I go down here to the very beginning, like there are no GPSs before 59. So essentially this is at the very beginning 0%. Okay. So then how do I make this line graph? I'm just not going to connect these 2 points. I make more points based on the height of the bar. So if this is 0, this bar ends at 17%. So my first line goes from the beginning of the bar to the end of the bar like that. When I get to 171, which is really 170 because 171 is the next bar, I will have represented 43% or 40, what I don't know what the number is, 40, yeah, 43% of my GPS. And so it's at the end of each bar or where the new bar begins that you go and you connect your points. So the very last bar has your 100% at the end. Your first bar has your 0% at the beginning. So this line graph is what your ogive is. So we could also say that now if we focus on this, this is your ogive for GPS prices. And then this is how it can be read. Once you have the line in, then you can do things like this. Oh, well, certainly the number 50% is usually kind of an interesting line to be. Like 50% of my GPSs are below or above what value. So even though this is not 100% true, as we go across and we hit the ogive here, we could then go down and we could kind of estimate that 50% of our GPSs are approximately under, I don't know, 180, $185, right? So at this point, that's 50%. Whoops, that's 50% of the second part. Here. I would have to do a little bit of a calculation here. I want to see our width. What was our width? Our width was, it was 54? 84. No, wait, hold on. That's spending. Go backwards. GPS. There it was. Our width was 56. So 25. So like I could say that like this might be, yeah, it's about okay. So for um if this was like one, we'll just say it's $190 and 50%, right? 50% of GPSs are under $190. And so that's what an Ogive allows us to do. Okay? So that point, I could say 50% of GPSs are less than, or I could say they're definitely less than 227, but I'm just putting an estimate in there, approximately $190. And that way, as you're shopping, you can figure out if you're in the top half of prices or the bottom half of prices as you're looking at different GPSs. I actually was kind of going online today to briefly look at, yes, they still, Garmin is the other very famous brand. There was TomTom for a while, but Garmin is the one that's mostly out there for an independent GPS or navigator system. So this one was done on a relative frequency histogram. You will find them, so I'm going to go back one page. You will find them like layered on top of this type. So where this side goes from 0 to 30, they would have a second axis over here that would say 100% and then would say 50%. So if this is, 50% would be right about here. And they would actually have the ogive. They had two vertical axes, and your ogive would go across like that. And so it's still the same shape, still reads the same, and still ends at the top part of your box. But now we can go ahead and play with this and be like, oh, 75% are here, and of course 25% are down there. So you could do a percent axis instead of cumulative relative frequency. Okay? So that's what those axes do. So there's these different types of histograms. Ogive allows us to look at accumulation. Okay. If you go to the back cover, I want to say of your packet, there was a picture one. So on the back of the orange page, yeah. So if you look at the bottom of your orange page, I believe there's an ogive down at the bottom. Let me just double check. I'll go back. Yeah. So page 2. So there will be like, so here's your regular histogram. Oops. And there's our box and whiskers, which we haven't gotten to yet. But here is your ogive, and you can see it just says cumulative frequency. So you can do it just on a cumulative frequency. You can add in an axis over here. So marks the end of term. So